Sorry I couldn't be there to go over this with you live, but let's talk about making a basic logo in Photoshop. First, we have to accept that most people don't make logos in Photoshop. With logos, you want vectors. If you think about the logos that you see in life, whether or not it be for a company, or it could be for a sports team or a local business, most logos involve sharp, fine lines. Not necessarily thin lines, but where the edges of those lines are crisp. And that's what vectors do. Vectors are designed to draw lines and have those lines be rendered cleanly. But you can make a decent logo in Photoshop. It's just not necessarily going to be as good if you print. So first, let's start out with the type of logo you're going to make. In the lecture, I talked about that there's 3 different kinds of logos. There's ones that are purely text. Here's a bunch of chihuahuas. There's ones that are all text. There's ones that are text and words, and then there's ones that, text and images, and there's ones that are just an image. Okay, for this assignment, I want you to do a logo that has a picture in it of some kind, and preferably a text with image logo. So I'm going to make a logo involving a chihuahua. And so I look on Google image search. As I mentioned with Shepherd Ferry, this isn't something you can just do normally in a professional job. You'd want to use a stock photo or a purchase photo generally. But what you're going to do is start out and think about what it is that you are making a logo for. You know, it has to be describable. It has to work in black and white and color. Those kinds of things. And so in this case, I'm going to pick a chihuahua. So I pick my picture of a chihuahua. I find one on a nice white background. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over to Photoshop. And I'm just going to copy the image. And when I go to Photoshop and make a new one, it will make it the same size as the thing that I have copied. Okay, colors are a little different, fine. And then again, to make it work in black and white and color, if I were to convert this picture, now I know you might think converting it to black and white means this, okay, but that's not black and white, that's grayscale. When a logo has to work in black and white in color, it really means black and white. It does not mean, it doesn't mean grayscale. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to get rid of the background. First, I'm going to delete my background layer down there at the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the magic wand tool and I'm going to click in the white background around the chihuahua. Does a pretty good job, but if I zoom in here, you can see that I'm getting some of the chest there. So let's go back to some of our selection stuff. And I'm going to say lasso tool. I'm going to negative lasso tool out that. And so now I have the outside of my chihuahua. Alright, so when I delete it, I have just the shape. And I'm also going to get in between the hind legs there, just to make sure I got the whole outline. There it is. Okay. And so now I feel bad for my chihuahua friend here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to image. There's a couple ways you can do it. I prefer to click outside in all the outside area, then say select inverse. That selects just the inside, and then take a black brush. Not a weird black brush, something normal. Make it large, and then we have, kind of looks like Dobby the house elf. And so we've got our chihuahua silhouette. Okay, and so now we have something that will work in black and white in color. Okay, and then we can integrate this into our logo. And then you've got to decide, how are these things going to fit together? Am I going to put the logo inside of the dark shape? Am I going to integrate the shape into my letters? That kind of stuff. And so let's talk about text. So now that I have this piece, I'm just going to leave that there. And I'm going to go to a new document. And in my new document, I'm going to call it, let's see, Chihuahua logo in 700 by 612. Sure, that's good size. Now, when I put type down, we're now part of the new content here. I'm going to ask you to use some of the stuff we've used in Photoshop before, but there's some new content. I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to make, like right now, I'm in San Francisco, and so I'm close across the street from a restaurant called Little Chihuahua Burritos. Okay, so now I have this strange font that I've picked, which is a terrible script font. I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm thinking, okay, it's Little Chihuahua Burritos. Well, it's little. And so little is in the word and in the name there. And so I'm probably not going to pick a thick, bold font. I'm going to pick a font that's got a nice, thin stroke to it because it's the little Chihuahua. You know, and so, and I'm going to look through my fonts. I would probably be better off picking one from 1001 free fonts. And so I am going to, let's see, how's that look? It's a little plain. And so you're going to look through and use the thing that you're making the logo for to guide your selection. And so, so I'm looking for thin font, and also this is for a restaurant sign in my imagination. And so I'm probably going to look for something that has a thin font, but is also sans serif. And so, this is a Helvetica Ultra Light. Interesting. Okay, and so now I've got a problem that I've got a fairly long name, Little Chihuahua Burritos. That's actually kind of a long name. So what I'm gonna think about how to structure this. Maybe 3 lines, 3 Little Chihuahua Burritos. And then I'm gonna highlight these because obviously in my case, last time I was using Photoshop, the leading is weird. And so that's why my letters, if you can see them, are on top of each other. So I'm going to go to Character, and I'm going to set the leading to normal, auto. That's a little too spaced out. So remember, I can click and drag on the leading. This is the character menu, and get that exactly right. Little Chihuahua Burritos. LCP. Okay. Cool. All right, so I've got my type. I kind of like that. You know, I think that the thinness works, but at the same time, again, it's a sans serif font, make it easier to read from a distance. And it's a mild serif. It's almost like it has a hint of a slab serif to it, but it's realistically it's a sans serif font. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of the new functionality in text editing that we have not played with thus far in this class. And so, for example, if I highlight my lettering, at the top it looks like a T sitting on a curve, and that is the thing create warped text. And so, for example, one of the things that I could do is I could take this and I could say arc lower, and it will sort of bend it around this way. I can adjust how much of a bend there is. Okay, I kind of like that one, but let's see, horizontal distortion. Vertical distortion. See, and so this is how you can get some of those sort of flying Superman type things. Okay, I could just arc it. Okay, but I want, oh, not that one. So anyway, and I encourage you just to experiment in here. You know, go into the warp text tool and experiment. Now, I'm not saying you absolutely must use one of these because some of them are just a little bit crazy. But at the same time, you might find something that fits. In my case, I'm going to switch to a center paragraph if it will allow me. Oop, not right now, it won't. So for example, I'm going to switch to a center, then I'll go to warp text, and then maybe I will do an arc. You know, and see how that looks. Sort of move it down. Interesting. You know, it's a little big for the area, but interesting. And so, you know, you can, and so in this case, I might do something like this, but I got to make more room. So I'm going to go to canvas size. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room up top. After that, so I'm going to go to canvas size. I'm going to make my width 1000. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to highlight this text, and then I'm going to say I want it to work in an arc. Let's say, I don't know, interesting, you know. And so, and if I were to do this, for example, now I don't know, is that legible? You know, like this sort of gets lost. Chihuahua is a long word to read across that arc. Okay, and so you know you can kind of experiment with it. But in most cases, I'm not going to use this for mine. I'm going to do something very simple. Okay, and so I'm going to take little Chihuahua burritos. I'm going to put that right there. And then I'm also going to go and take my logo from over here. I'm going to select all. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to paste it. Then I'm going to use the free transform tool. And I'm going to put that right there. Now, since it's little Chihuahua burritos, I might be tempted to make this guy small, since it's a little Chihuahua. Okay, and so now I've got to think about how can I integrate my little Chihuahua into my logo. Well, actually, now that I look at this, I'm going to take these and I'm going to left align them. And I'm going to take my little burrito, my little Chihuahua, whoops, and I am going to take that guy and I'm going to put him down here. Okay, so now if you think about my design, okay, let me explain why I did it this way. Okay, is that if I put this too close to the word burrito, it's going to look like part of the words. Okay, and so it's little Chihuahua. I made it little, and then I'm also, just for the sake of precision, is I'm going to drag a line down there just to make sure that these things line up pretty good. Okay, that's pretty good. And then I'm also going to take this line and I'm going to drag it to the end of that A, and I'm going to nudge my burrito loving Chihuahua over, and there's my logo. Okay. And so now I know I'm pushing these animal logos. It doesn't have to have an animal in it. You know, you can do this with a car. And then when you're brainstorming for things that could be in it, remember there's the icon. You can show a picture of the thing. Okay. There is the indexical sign, which means you could show something like, in this case, I might show tiny footprints to mean little Chihuahua. Okay, and then there's the icon, and the icon could be something associated with this place. Okay, but that's my main logo, all right, for this. Now let's talk about, let me do a second one. All right, let me do a well drilling company. Okay, so let me just look up at the top. Whoops, sorry. So I'm just going to look around, well drilling. Okay, and if I think about like wells in general, okay, oh, there's an L. Okay, that's nice. That a well drilling truck looks like an L. All right, so that's something interesting that you could work with, right? So I'll maybe take this image. It's already transparent, which is awesome. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to Photoshop, make a new one. This time I'm going to make it 1000 by 1000. Just, I'm going to paste that in there. Right. And now with this, I wanted to show you a second one. And again, it's not, you know, it's kind of like with the Chihuahua one. And I actually did that intentionally. Like I showed you the lettering up here where you can sort of bend it or put it on an arc or something like that. But I didn't use it. Okay. And I'm asking you to use these things very sparingly. There are times where you want words to bend, but again, that's probably something better done in Adobe Illustrator than Adobe Photoshop. But in this case, I'm going to say, you know, Schneider's well drilling. Okay, And so now one of the things in this case, now Shire's well drilling, that's a kind of a more well drilling, sounds more manly, at least in my mind. And so anyway, I'm gonna look for a Futura. I like Futura. It's a great font. It's thick. It's sans serif. Okay. And so I've got my letters here. Now, the other thing that you're going to notice when you get into the type tool is that there is a 3D type at the top. So here, over here on the little bit, it's to the right, but on the left, is the warp text. That'll bend your text for you. Okay, and then, but then here we have create 3D from text. Okay, now the problem with 3D text is that partially that you're gonna have trouble making this work well in black and white and color, and trouble with scalability, because when you're adding 3D, you're adding a whole bunch of graphical elements to those letters that are not compatible essentially with a lot of things that we associate with readability, legibility. Okay, so anyway, so when I click that 3D button, I get a whole bunch of things on the screen. Okay, and so let me explain what's happening. On the top, I am looking down on the letters, and so my letters now are 3D. They have an extrusion, and on the right, you can see this thing, extrusion depth. So I can actually make it bigger, or I can make it shorter. Okay, and so essentially, I can change the thickness of the letters both backwards and forwards. For some reason, it doesn't want to do it, but do it. Let's see. Okay, then we also can rotate the object itself, and that's down here. You can see this X, Y, and Z thing, and the one that looks like it's got sort of bands going around it, like a rubber band ball, that's to rotate things rotate them. Okay, this is zoom, just up and down, pan, and then we also can zoom in and out. So see, and it takes a little bit. You got to click on it, then tell it that's what you want to do. But again, look at that. That's illegible. So I'm going to change my extrusion to 5. That's a little too thin. So I'm going over here to extrusion to 10. Okay, just to add a little bit of 3D to it. Then I also have again, this is my pan the 3D camera. Okay, and then also though the move tool here I think will allow me to, I can click and drag this on that Z axis. Okay, so I can move my letters as well. Okay, and so let's say I'm really in love with this 3D for some reason, so I'm going to try to get it so it's like pretty good. And now I'm going to try to integrate my image into it. Okay, and so I'm going to go to my layers palette, and I'm going to take layers, and I'm going to move this maybe over somewhere. Okay, it's a little bit, I need more room. So I'm going to say canvas size, make my width 1500. And remember, these have to work big and small, so I'm not really doing the best job here. And then I'm going to put, figure out that. But anyway, this is 3D text. Okay, and 3D text is there. You can see it gets a shadow. I get it embosses it, essentially extrudes it, so it gives each letter some thickness, and it works. I mean, it's not a bad tool to have in your sort of tool belt, but at the same time, it can cause problems. Like, for example, this, printing this out on all black and white, these shadows would then turn jet black, and it would be very, very tough to read. Okay. Then when I get that done, now the problem is if I look at the layer here, okay, the layer palette, it's going to have all kinds of crazy things under that layer. Okay, like it's got all kinds of, you can see it's a 3D layer. So then what I'm going to do when I get it where I like is I right click on it and I say Rasterize 3D. Okay, and what that does is it then turns the layer into a normal, any kind of layer. it's like a photograph or something. Okay, and so, but I'm not exactly in love with this 3D text, so I'm going to delete it. So just like on the Chihuahua logo, I showed you text warp and decided against using it. On my well drilling logo, I showed you 3D text and decided against using it. Okay, you can use these things, but use them sparingly and use them for a reason. They're not super fancy computer CGI stuff that's going to impress anybody. So use them for a reason. All right, and so for my well drilling, in this case, I could try to use this as an L. Okay, that might be interesting. But the problem is that in my case, um, that I have kind of a long title I'm picking again. Okay, so I'm going to highlight my text here, make it maybe larger, or I could make the truck smaller as well. So click on the type layer, edit, free transform, and then make this smaller, just as a framing element, kind of across. And again, you think about what makes a good logo. It's describable, that kind of thing. And so in this case, I might take this layer and say, edit, transform, root, flip. Oops. As long as I've done this, I can never remember flip vertical or flip horizontal. Okay, and so maybe I would do something like this, because I don't want this to be overpowering. And then also you can also think about alignment. Like, there's a lot of well drilling companies theoretically, and so what I'm going to do with my text is I'm going to right alignment, align it. I'm going to give it a little more gap, and see the E and the W, they look like they're further apart, just because the shape of the letters. So I'm going to actually increase the leading just a little bit, and then I'm going to take my truck. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say edit, transform, flip horizontal again. I'm going to put it back the way it was, and I'm going to, I might even scale it down just a little bit, free transform it down just a little bit, but I want to make sure it's still a truck. Okay, and so anyway, but there is not a great logo, but it's a logo. Okay, and then, black and white in color. Let me do one more thing. I might actually even leave this. Okay, so if the guy does a website, you might have that version there. But then what I want to do is window, layers again, is duplicate this layer. So I'd call that black and white truck. Okay, this is going to be color truck. And a hide black and white color truck for a moment. And then I just take all of this. I take my lasso tool. Whoops. There's actually this weird thing that if I've not shown to you personally, that every Photoshop user knows, hardcore user knows, but that if for some reason is not in a manual. If I highlight around something, take the move tool, and I press up and then down on the arrow keys, it makes it cling to the selection. So now what I can do is I can take my black brush, that's probably still set from last time, it is, and now I've got one that's ready for t-shirts. Okay, and now in this case, part of what I did here is I selected, I used the right alignment, because if it's Schneider's well drilling, then the first name is important, and so by aligning it to the right, it makes this name stick out a lot more. And actually, now that I look at this, I think I also probably have a tracking problem, and so I'm going to decrease my tracking. Like that, something like that, just to make it a little bit more complete. And then I might, think about alignment. I might think about going like putting a line there and a line at the bottom. And then taking my truck logo. And making it line up. I don't know. Maybe line up with the ground on the bottom. Something along those lines. Okay. But anyway, that's two really basic logos, and so, and again, anything that's more complex would be done in Adobe Illustrator. Now, you also can use the drawing tools. And the third one that I'll do right now, let's say that you get something that's really, really abstract. Okay, like I'm going to make width 1500 and height like 1000. Okay, and so if you get like one of these jobs, like I had one for a dentist, and he didn't want anything to do with dentistry in his logo, which is fine. If he's paying me and that's what he wants, that's what he's going to get. Okay, and so anyway, remember that we also have the draw tools down at the bottom. Okay, and so now and so therefore you can use these. Okay, now we don't have extensive draw tools, but we do have the pen tool. We do have the rounded rectangle tool. All these kinds of things that if you need to use them, um, that you can do that. And so if you want to draw something basic, like for example, if I was going to do my Chihuahua logo again, my little Chihuahua here, there he is. Okay, well what I might do is I might want to take something like the circle tool, make a black outline, take my Chihuahua here, I'm copying them and pasting them. Okay, but then I invert him, so now he's white. And so, and now I'm going to take him and I'm going to move him over and I'm going to put him inside of that shape. Okay, kind of cute. And so in some ways I think that makes it, I like that better in some ways. Okay, and so anyway, so also don't be afraid to use the drawing tools. So for example, if it was Chihuahua Realty, let's say, well then I might take the rectangle tool and then add a couple pieces here at the end to turn this into like some kind of key, like if it was Chihuahua Realty, and so don't be afraid to use the draw tools. Use the line tools with them, that kind of thing, to get stuff to line up the way you want it. And then at the end, just remember to line things up appropriately. Okay, so Chihuahua Realty, my imaginary business. And so anyway, so take advantage of the draw tool. So again, take advantage of the idea that you can warp text, take advantage of the idea that you can 3D text, and also take advantage of the drawing tools. Use all of these within reason. You're not using Adobe Illustrator, so therefore the logos that you should create should be fairly simple. And using silhouettes is one of the most common techniques in logo design to make sure you hit the big points: describable, memorable, black and white in color, scalable, relevant to topic, without overdoing it. So anyway, good luck with this, and I'll be back on Tuesday. And if you have questions in the interim, make sure to hit up Glenn. He'll be available in my absence. Thanks a lot.